All right, everybody. So I'm here with everyone's favorite attorney, Andrea Burkhart, and we are here to talk about the absolutely massive bombshell that broke yesterday in the Marilyn Manson case, or in the Marilyn Manson hoax, as we're going to be referring to it henceforth. One of Marilyn Manson's major accusers, Ashley Morgan Smithline, she did a People magazine cover. She was on The View. She sued him. She recanted her allegations in a sworn statement that was filed by Manson's attorneys yesterday as a part of his larger legal efforts to fight this hoax. And in this sworn statement, this woman who had formerly accused him of all kinds of things recanted, said he did not do any of those things to her, that she was manipulated by Evan Rachel Wood and Esme Bianco into conspiring against him and lying. And basically, she doesn't use the word hoax, but basically all that says that she was manipulated into this hoax. And so, Andrea, we're going to look at two things. First of all, just from a basic PR, human perspective, what do you think about this? How big is it? What's the impact?
Yeah, this is huge. I mean, this is really revealing the hoax in living color. It's confirming the allegations that Marilyn Manson made in his lawsuit against Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore about what they were doing, how they did it, how they went about it. They now actually have somebody who was subjected to it, confirming that's how it went down, that certain acts were suggested to her, pushed upon her. She's being told that maybe she doesn't, just because she doesn't remember doesn't mean it didn't happen. And if it happened to all of these other women, it probably happened to her. And what stands out to me about it is, because I have the background in criminal defense, I am used to looking at interrogations and statements and things like that, and looking for circumstances that are coercive, that are suggestive, that are very well known and understood to taint the reliability of the information that you get out of that report. And so when we saw the Phoenix Rising documentary, we saw, these survivor meetings, we saw the checklists, we saw the scripts. These things all were flashing bright red flags to me of, the types of circumstances that you would look for that would make, if this were, a formal interview, police interview or something like that, there's absolutely no way that this gets any weight at all. Because those circumstances are so suggestive. So I think it's really important that this is now out there in the public for people to understand. These things do happen. This is how they happen. This is not something new that we're only just now learning about. I mean, you and I grew up in the 90s with the Satanic Panic. This type of thing has been going on for a long time. We understand quite a bit about false accusations, false memories, how they can come about. And yet, for whatever reason, in this era that we're currently in, there's this mythology that false reports never happen. And it just is not reality. So for something as high profile as this to be out there to show people, yes, this is reality. This does happen, and it maybe happens more often than you would like to think it does. I think that's a really important thing for just being able to better understand the world that we live in.
Right. And unfortunately, I do think that false allegations happen a lot. 2 years ago when I started my YouTube channel, and I started it to look at the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation. But 2 years ago when I started my YouTube channel, my assumption was that false allegations were rare. That I'd always believed that by and large, people don't lie about stuff. It's a big ordeal coming forward and saying that someone did something to you. It makes you, it can make you look bad, feel bad, all of that, right? And so my idea and most people's idea was that, generally speaking, when people come forward with allegations, they're telling the truth. But what has happened over the last 2 years is that I have seen, and I'm not only talking about the big media celebrity stories that I do on my show, but people who have come to me behind the scenes, ordinary men, or the wives or daughters or sisters of ordinary men who have been caught up in these kinds of hoaxes or these false allegations, women lying about them, and and cases that I've been reading about, right? And having been made more aware to this, I really do think that false allegations are not rare. I'm not saying that they're the majority of allegations, but I do think this happens a lot. And then on top of that, as you know, you add in all of the celebrity and the money aspects of it, and you can see why someone like Marilyn Manson would have multiple women coming forward with false allegations. So here's kind of along the same lines of my last question. Do you think Evan, just speculating, do you think that she's regretting this? And do you think that her attorney, I just really am curious how it goes when you have a client. I know clients lie to attorneys all the time, and that's part of it. But when you have a client who has, as it turns out, like you thought you were getting this client because she had this really noble, cool sexual assault thing against this rock star, right? And an abuse thing. And it was so, and oh, it's a documentary and all this is great. The worm has turned, as they say, and now the attorney realizes that she's got a gigantic scammer and maybe the hoax of the decade or the hoax of all time on her hands and all of that. Like, is there a feeling, do you think, with the attorney, like, would the attorney ever chastise Evan or say, like, what the fuck, or this is really a pickle you gotten us into? Or does she have to just kind of like, does she just have to go along with the delusion? I mean, how much do you have to go along with this delusion when you're an attorney? What I want to know.
Well, so the first thing I want to say is that Sean Hawley is no fool. She has been around the block. She has dealt with these people for decades. So I would find it very hard to believe that Sean Hawley did not instantly recognize red flags when she meets with Evan Rachel Wood and when she's in the early stages of getting involved in this case. Sean Hawley is a defense lawyer. It's not to say she doesn't sue people, but, her background is people being accused coming to her and she is helping them defend themselves. That's kind of the situation in which Evan Rachel Wood appears to have come to her, having to do with, the FBI questioning and this stuff. And then, of course, Marilyn Manson's lawsuit. So how surprised she is by the unraveling, who's really to say, but my suspicion is that, she was not expecting a perfect case, a perfect client. How much do you give into the delusion where you're not a good attorney if you just give into your client's illusions, because the jury is not going to share those illusions. The judge is not going to share those illusions. And so part of your job is being able to show your client, here's the disconnect between, your version and then the evidence that other people are going to be basing this off of. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily do you anything, positive to berate your client or, treat your client like an unruly child. I mean, yeah, the client is like an unruly child. That's, you get what you get. There's not really anything that would be gained from the case by doing that.
Right.
I don't know what her client management style is. She's dealt with some clients that, look to me like they would probably be client management nightmares. I mean, Lindsay Lohan, when she was dealing with Lindsay Lohan's whole probation violation over and over and over again. And like, Lindsay, all you have to do is go do your fucking community service. And she, for like years, just would not do it. And it puts Sean Hawley in, this very difficult situation of trying to bridge the gap between what Lindsay Lohan thinks is a justifiable reason for not doing the community service and what the judge is going to accept as a valid excuse. So attorneys are used to bridging those types of gaps. It's part of her job. I wouldn't be surprised if she expected to be needing to do some of this, saving type of stuff for Evan Rachel Wood. But it's hard to say.
I'm sure it's a minefield though, because you're trying on the one hand to stay tethered to reality so you can put together a good case and deal with things as they happen, right? But at the same time, you've got this client who's in this either consciously or unconsciously in this delusion world. So I've always thought that would be an interesting thing to have to navigate as an attorney.
The thing that I often tell people when I talk about how this kind of stuff works is that what your client tells you is just one piece of evidence in a case, and it's often not particularly reliable evidence. So, okay, you hear it, you take it into consideration, but it's not the whole story, and any lawyer is going to know that it's not the whole story. So you really get a lot more of your opinion about the case by looking at how does the rest of the universe of the evidence and the testimony, how does that align with what my client is telling me? If there's a lot of consistency, great. But when there's not a lot of consistency, it doesn't mean you don't represent that person. Everyone's
Right.
entitled to their lawyer and whatnot. But it just changes what you're really able to rely on when it comes to trying to actually advance your client's interests in a case.
Yeah, and so Sean Hawley and Evan Rachel Wood's other attorneys, they've been having, I'm sure, a gradual awakening to the reality. Not only is she a liar, but they are like as my ex-army husband likes to say, they're balls deep in the bullshit. So anyway, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, Britney Spears, she seems like she's really flourishing with her newfound freedom, huh?
Oh, Brittany.
We'll leave that alone for now. But for people who don't know, I think one of the most controversial videos that Andrea and I ever did together was on Britney Spears, and I was not, and still am not very educated on the topic. But Andrea had very let's say unconventional opinions, or maybe just unpopular opinions. And so every now and then when I see that Britney's having some kind of a public freak out or there's some kind of controversy, I'll send Andrea a text about it. All right, everybody. As always, check out both of our channels, like, subscribe, all of that. We both have covered the Manson case a lot over the past 2 years and a lot of other cases. Andrea's done a lot of stuff on the Idaho thing too recently. All of our links are below. We appreciate your donations, and yeah, stay tuned. Thanks, Andrea.